The evening I had planned to have dinner with my parents. We waited at the restaurant from the afternoon until nightfall, but Jason never arrived. I called him several times, but he didn't answer even once. Then, as I glanced at my phone, I noticed his first love had shared a post on social media. In the picture, she was grinning inside a car, wearing a familiar ring. The caption read, "Thank you, Mr. Jason, for the birthday present. I love it." I stared at her Instagram post in silence before liking it without a word. Later, I confronted him, saying, "If you have feelings for her, then go ahead and marry her." His eyes narrowed slightly, his voice shaking. "You're my girlfriend. Not anymore. That ended the moment you gave her a ring instead of showing up that day." Before I saw Farah's Instagram update, I was still trying to make excuses for his absence. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, suffocating me like I was slowly falling apart. The ring she was wearing, I had seen it before. It had been tucked away in a corner of his wardrobe. Back then, I assumed he was finally planning to propose, and I had been eagerly waiting for that moment. I even thought that the dinner he arranged with my parents was meant to discuss our marriage. But in the end, he was the one who planned this meeting, and the one who failed to show up. I stared at the picture she had posted, my eyes burning. It felt like something inside me was crumbling. My mum, noticing my change in demeanor, asked with concern, "Is everything okay?" Forcing a smile, I replied, "Let's not wait anymore. Let's eat. Are you sure you don't want to wait a little longer?" "There's no need. We're not waiting anymore." I spoke calmly and began eating. The food had been served long ago, but since we had been waiting for him, it had been reheated multiple times. Now that it was in front of me, it had lost the freshness and taste it originally had. My mum sensed that something was wrong but chose not to press further. My dad, already out of patience, ate a few bites before putting down his chopsticks and leaving. I grabbed my bag and walked out as well, wandering aimlessly along the street. By then, it was already 10 at night, and the streets were nearly deserted. Even the traffic had significantly dwindled. At that moment, Jason's call came through. I ignored it and took a taxi home. As soon as I stepped inside, his angry voice rang out. "Where have you been? Why are you coming back so late?" I froze momentarily, tightened my grip on my bag, and replied with an unreadable expression. "Do you remember what you promised me this morning?" That morning, before he left for work, I reminded him about our dinner plans, afraid he might forget. I wanted him to come early and make a good impression on my parents. He had smiled at me and reassured me. "Of course I won't forget. We're meeting your parents. Such an important occasion." Jason was taken aback, a flicker of guilt flashing in his eyes. He must have recalled what he had said earlier. He apologized. "Sorry, work was hectic today. I forgot." He stepped toward me, arms outstretched as if to hug me. I quietly sidestepped him, avoiding his touch. As he drew nearer, I caught a faint scent of jasmine, Farah's signature perfume. Jason's eyes flickered in surprise, as if he hadn't expected me to dodge him. "Are you mad?" I looked at him coldly and asked, "Did you really forget about our plans today? Because of work?" His deep voice carried a hint of irritation. "Are you doubting me?" Seeing him like this, annoyed, I suddenly felt like he was a complete stranger. Or maybe he had never truly shown me who he was. I took a deep breath. "Let's break up, Jason. I had said his name countless times before, but never like this, with such calm finality. Jason stiffened, his expression darkening. His voice was almost a growl. What did you say? We had always been good at avoiding fights, knowing when to back off and change the subject to prevent conflicts from escalating. I had never wanted to argue, but that didn't mean I could keep pretending. I said, "Let's break up. I'll give you your freedom." I thought this was the most dignified way to end things. No messy drama, no lingering resentment. Jason didn't respond immediately. His gaze lingered on my face for a long time. "You're making a big deal out of something so trivial." I met his stare in silence and turned toward the bedroom. "You need to explain yourself. What exactly is this big deal about?" He sounded exasperated. I ignored him, walked to the wardrobe, and pulled open the corner where I had seen the ring box before. As expected, it was gone. I pointed at the empty space, swallowing back my pain, and spoke deliberately. "Today, you were supposed to have dinner with my parents. Instead, you spent the day with another woman, celebrating her birthday and giving her a ring with meaning." "Jason, how do you expect me to feel?" I hadn't intended to lay everything out so bluntly, but I also didn't want to be accused of overreacting. If I was going to end this, I might as well be direct. Jason didn't seem particularly concerned. He frowned, his tone turning cold. "Missing one dinner isn't a big deal. I'll just reschedule. And as for the ring, it's just jewelry. Why are you so hung up on it? If you want one, I'll buy you a few tomorrow." He always dismissed my concerns as insignificant. To him, anything that money could fix wasn't a real problem. I smirked sarcastically. "No need. Give them to someone who wants them." By the time I came home, I had already made up my mind. There was no point in dragging this out. Jason couldn't comprehend my decision. He spoke coldly. "Once you calm down, we can talk." Without waiting for my response, he turned and walked out the door. I stood still, the silence around me feeling suffocating. I had expected him to agree immediately, yet he chose to evade the breakup instead. A sudden wave of disgust washed over me. If he still had lingering feelings for someone else, why keep me around, making things miserable for everyone? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Ending a relationship isn't like confessing love. It doesn't require mutual consent. Once the words were spoken, I had no reason to linger. My parents were both high school teachers and had come for a conference. They would be leaving in a few days. I had nowhere to go. So I packed my belongings and checked into a hotel. When something ends, it should be completely over. After finishing all necessary tasks, I erased Jason's contact information. Once I had settled down, I surveyed the unfamiliar surroundings and reminisced about the past. I had secretly admired Jason for years, though he never realized it. He only knew that we attended the same university, where I was his junior. To him, I was merely one of many younger students. He was the student council president, outstanding and distant, someone difficult to approach. To stand by his side, I altered my study habits, worked diligently, and climbed from the lowest ranks of my class to the top 3 in my department. I also joined the student council to be nearer to him. After graduation, he took charge of the family business, and I became a minor employee at his company. Perhaps because I was his junior, he looked after me, and I became lost in the illusion of his favoritism, unable to pull myself out. Thinking back, I let out a self-mocking smile. Only now did I realize that when you dream too much, you lose sight of reality. While settling into the hotel, I also searched for a new residence. During this period, I continued working as usual. As just another employee, the CEO, Jason, barely acknowledged my presence. What I hadn't expected was the shocking news the manager delivered that afternoon. The assistant manager position, which I had been almost certain to obtain, had been taken. This is our department's new assistant manager, Farah. Let's all work well together, the manager announced. The office fell silent, and all eyes turned toward me. Some assessing, some skeptical, others simply waiting for drama. I cast a cold glance at her. Farah met my gaze with a triumphant smirk, as if to say there was nothing she couldn't have, whether it was Jason or the job. Just then, Jason entered with his assistant, his indifferent eyes sweeping over the office. When our gazes met, it felt as though he were looking at a stranger completely unaffected. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Seeing this, the employees clapped, welcoming her. I had been so certain I would be promoted that I had even invited him to dinner and jokingly told him to start calling me assistant manager. He couldn't have been unaware of how much I had anticipated this promotion. It wasn't hard to see. This was a warning. What he didn't realize was that another company had extended an offer to me long ago, and the job offer was permanent. Since I could no longer remain here, I had to find a new direction. Following the introduction, I immediately contacted the head of the other company to discuss my situation. I assumed they would wait until my contract ended to bring me on board. But to my surprise, they were willing to pay the termination fee and allow me to start on Monday. Having worked in the marketing department for 4 years, I had built successful partnerships and secured valuable business deals. The other company recognized my contributions and was willing to offer a high salary to bring me in. I didn't accept right away, instead requesting 2 days to think it over. I needed to plan carefully and avoid impulsive decisions. That day, I was the first to leave the office. In the past, I had always been the last, prioritizing efficiency. Some colleagues teased me, joking that I was slacking off now that I hadn't been promoted. I simply smiled without responding. What I didn't expect was to see a car parked by the roadside as soon as I stepped outside. Ignoring it, I headed toward the bus stop. Farah rolled down the passenger side window and called out, "Isabel, come over. We're waiting for you." Hearing this, my colleagues turned to watch. Not wanting to make a scene, I walked over with a cold expression. "Assistant manager, is there something you need?" At my words, she smiled. "This isn't the office. You can just call me by my name." Jason sat in the driver's seat, his expression distant, not even sparing me a glance. His furrowed brow hinted at impatience. "Get in the car," he ordered. "I'm starting my first day at work today and thought I'd invite you and Jason for a meal." "No need, I'm not hungry," I replied, turning to leave. Jason shot me a cold glance. "Get in the car." I scoffed, ignoring him, and walked to the side of the road to hail a taxi. Now that I was switching jobs, I had to adjust my housing search as well. Once inside the taxi, I contacted real estate agents to help find a place. Until I secured a suitable home, I would continue staying at the hotel. After dinner, I took a walk, hoping to find nearby accommodations. But nothing seemed ideal. After freshening up and lying in bed, I opened Instagram and saw a post from Farah, uploaded just 10 minutes ago. It was a picture of them at dinner in a restaurant. Though she didn't capture Jason's face, his hand was visible, his distinct knuckles and the watch on his wrist. That watch was familiar. It was the first birthday present I had given him with my own earnings. It wasn't expensive like the rest of his collection, but he had said he liked it and wore it often. I used to believe he genuinely cherished it. Until last month, when his assistant casually mentioned that he only wore it to appear modest in front of certain business partners. My gaze drifted to her caption, "First day at work today. Looking forward to working with you all," followed by a bold flying kiss emoji. So bold. I quietly tapped the like button, then promptly removed her from my friend list. The following morning, after getting ready for work, I opened my door and found a bouquet of vibrant roses on the floor. I scowled and kicked the flowers aside. When I lifted my gaze, I locked eyes with Jason's unhappy expression. He was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, his usually messy hair now neatly styled. And he held a takeaway breakfast in one hand. "You used to love roses, didn't you?" he asked. "But not the ones from you," I replied evenly. "How did you even find me here?" He pressed his lips together before answering. "I got your location from the address you use for deliveries." That reminded me. I had once used his phone to place an order. At the time, he had teased me about my choice of food, calling it junk. I gave him a cold stare before brushing past him toward the elevator. Jason picked up the flowers and trailed after me. "When are you moving back?" he asked impatiently, just as the elevator doors were about to close. I met his gaze with an icy stare. "That's not my home anymore. Why would I return? Have you forgotten? We're over. Are you upset because I gave the assistant manager role to Farah?" he questioned, his tone softening. "As long as you stop making trouble, I'll promote you later. She's only in that position to gain experience. She won't be staying there permanently." His words struck me as absurdly ironic. A role I had spent years striving for could be taken away with a single casual decision. It made all my hard work feel like a meaningless joke in his eyes. Meeting his gaze, I responded calmly. "There's no need. I don't want anything tied to you anymore." I had no interest in the position, the ring, or him. His face darkened instantly at my words. At that moment, the elevator reached the ground floor. Ignoring his sour expression, I stepped out and continued on my way. Arriving at the company, I noticed Thea chatting with Jason's assistant in the lobby. The moment she spotted me, she smiled. "I heard you took the day off. Are you feeling all right?" she asked casually, shifting her bag onto her arm. My eyes unintentionally landed on it, and I froze. It was the birthday gift Jason had promised to get me last month. He had even asked for my opinion. Worried I might not like it. Noticing my reaction, Thea feigned surprise. "Oh, this bag. Jason got it for me. Isn't it gorgeous? I actually wanted him to buy one for you too, but unfortunately, it's a limited edition. Only 3 exist in the world, and this was the last one." It was obvious who had his favor. My gaze flickered to the ring on her finger before shifting back to the bag, and a faint smirk played on my lips. "It suits you," I said lightly. "You two are such a perfect pair. I almost feel like we should just hold the wedding here and now." For a brief moment, Thea's smile stiffened. "What are you even talking about? You're Jason's girlfriend now," I said with feigned encouragement. "We just broke up, so your opportunity is right in front of you. Make sure you don't waste it." I threw out those empty words and headed upstairs, but that interaction solidified my decision. I needed to leave sooner rather than later. Out of sight, out of mind. That afternoon, I directly responded to the executive from the other company, confirming my intention to accept their offer. Now, all that was left was to prepare for my first day next Monday. That evening, I had dinner planned with my parents since it was their last day in the city. I had reserved a restaurant in advance. "Is Jason joining us?" my mother asked. I shook my head. "We broke up. He won't be coming." Hearing that, my father's tense expression visibly relaxed. "It's good that you finally came to your senses. You two were never headed in the same direction. Forcing it would have been pointless." His words were blunt, but accurate. When we first started dating, both our families opposed the relationship. His parents had thought my family was too ordinary, unworthy of theirs. I had spent years making an effort to win their approval, but in hindsight, I should have realized something sooner. If someone truly loves you, they will also make an effort. I had never wanted to put him in a difficult position, so I had gone out of my way to gain his parents' acceptance. But on my end, I had been fighting alone all along. Looking at my father, I made a firm promise. "You're right. I won't make this kind of mistake again." For once, our family set aside all other topics and simply enjoyed the meal together. The following day, I personally saw my parents off. Word had already spread through my company that I was leaving. And since my new CEO had handled the negotiations directly, there was no need for me to return to Jason's company. I arranged a meeting with a real estate agent to find a new place. Luckily, the agent was competent, and I managed to secure an ideal apartment in just a single day. It was conveniently located just a 10-minute walk from my new job. After signing the lease, I returned to the hotel, packed up my belongings, and prepared to move. Just as I finished, my phone rang. It was an old colleague. "Good thing you left early," she said. "Otherwise you'd be furious right now." I frowned. "Why? What happened?" She let out an annoyed huff. "That project you worked so hard to secure, Thea snatched it. Shameless. Just because she has someone backing her, she thinks she can do whatever she wants." Hearing that, I instantly recalled the project. Initially, I had felt guilty about leaving, thinking I should at least ensure a smooth handover for the next person. But after this, I no longer cared. "If she wants it, she can have it," I said indifferently. That particular client was notoriously difficult to work with. Without proper guidance, Thea would struggle to handle the project. I chatted with my colleague for a while, and as soon as I hung up, an unfamiliar number flashed on my screen. I intended to reject the call, but my finger slipped, and I accidentally answered. Jason's voice came through, laced with irritation. "Are you really going this far?" So, he had heard about my departure and was now calling to question me. "Think whatever you want," I said flatly. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. An ex should be treated like the dead. Completely out of sight, out of mind, with no lingering ties." With that thought, I went into my phone settings and enabled automatic blocking for unknown numbers. After that, I was done. A wave of unexpected relief washed over me. No matter what I had done before, I had always been subconsciously tuned into his reactions, afraid of upsetting him. Gradually, my life had started to revolve around him, and in the process, I had lost myself. Even his mother had once warned me not to invest too much in a man. Back then, I had brushed off her words. But looking back now, wasn't she absolutely right? Living on my own turned out to be wonderful. I didn't have to consider anyone else's mood. I could do as I pleased. If I ever got bored, I could head to the cinema, lose myself in a movie, and not worry about the time. I fully enjoyed the freedom of being alone, and I never grew tired of it. But good things never last. I was stunned to find out that my new neighbor had changed. Standing before me, impeccably dressed and exuding confidence, was Sarah. The smile on my face slowly faded. In the quiet hallway, the only sound was the drama playing from my phone. Thea appeared equally shocked. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Without acknowledging her, I turned away, keyed in my apartment passcode under her disbelieving gaze, and stepped inside. I had assumed that in such a vast city, as long as I didn't deliberately seek out encounters, our paths wouldn't cross again. Who would have thought that after everything, I would end up right back here? Unbelievable. I pushed the thought aside and continued my routine. A few days later, after working late, I returned home only to spot a familiar car parked outside my building. Jason and Farah stood beside it, deep in conversation. She appeared visibly downcast. Jason, his expression gentle, inclined his head slightly as if offering comfort. The moment she noticed me, she threw herself into his arms without hesitation. His body tensed briefly, but he didn't push her away. They were standing directly in front of the only entrance. If I wanted to go home, I had no choice but to walk past them. Keeping my expression cold, I strode forward. Jason noticed me. Looking guilty, he quickly pushed her away and rushed toward me. "You're misunderstanding the situation. It's not what you think." I cut him off coolly. "Move. You're in my way." Thea's eyes glistened on the verge of tears as she pleaded. "Isabel, after all this time, are you still mad at Jason?" Her voice trembled, painting her as the victim. Annoyed, I shot back. "What do you want?" "I already wished you too well. Why keep putting on an act in front of me? What are you trying to say?" Jason's gaze flickered between us in confusion. Thea's face stiffened, clearly uneasy. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Yeah, nothing at all," I echoed indifferently. "I just saw your sweet couple photos and sent my blessings." Jason looked lost, but Thea understood immediately. Flustered, she hurriedly changed the topic. "Jason, isn't your mother waiting for you at the hospital? You should go pick her up." Watching her guilty expression, I nearly laughed. Jason hesitated, but eventually gave me a long look before driving off. The moment he was gone, Thea shot me a venomous glare. "Don't think you can steal Jason from me. He's mine, always has been." I met her glare head-on and waved dismissively. "Yep, he's all yours. I sincerely hope you two never break up." With that, I turned and walked away. The next morning, as I left for work, Jason was already waiting outside my building. Seeing him approach, I immediately said, "I'm not interested, Jason." "Don't waste your time." He ignored my words, his gaze carrying a hint of hurt as he held out a bag. "I stopped by your favorite breakfast place. You have stomach issues. You should eat in the mornings." Stomach issues? Those were courtesy of all the nights I spent drinking my way through business deals for his benefit. Years had passed, and now he suddenly remembered? A slight smirk tugged at my lips. "And you think this matters now?" His voice was earnest. "I never wanted to break up. What happened was my fault. I'll make it up to you, little by little. Please, give me another chance." For the first time, I seriously met his gaze. "Did Thea cross your mind while you said that? You pamper her endlessly, yet you come to me acting affectionate. Jason, what exactly are you thinking? Do you see yourself as some kind of king, entitled to both?" His face turned pale. I only see Farah as a sister. There's nothing romantic between us. Disgust churned in my stomach. Have you ever seen a brother give his sister a ring? Honestly, if you're so into her, why not just marry her? His eyes reddened slightly, his voice trembling. But you're my girlfriend. I'm not. The moment you gave her that ring and stood me up, I stopped being yours. I had thought I made myself clear. But later that day, I received an afternoon tea delivery from him. Besides the drinks, there's also this, the delivery man said, carefully pulling a small ring box from his pocket. It was the one I had seen in my closet before. The guy who ordered it said it's for you. Realizing what was happening, I immediately refused. The delivery man looked troubled. This thing is really expensive. I was already nervous bringing it here. If you don't want it, please return it yourself. If it gets lost, I'd have to work 2 years just to pay for it. Feeling sorry for him, I took the ring box but left it unopened. I had no intention of keeping something that no longer belonged to me. I initially planned to hand it over to Farah after work, only to find out she had moved away. The apartment across from mine was empty again, left with no other choice. I added Jason back as a contact. The moment he accepted my request, I got straight to the point. Send someone to pick up the ring. I had worked at his company before, and many people still knew me. If someone saw me returning the ring personally, rumors would spread. And if my current workplace caught wind of it, that wouldn't be good either. But he simply replied, "Didn't you like this ring? I made sure to get it back for you." Reading that, anger flared in me. He still didn't get it. "I don't want it. Get someone to take it back immediately, or I'll throw it away." He didn't reply. Instead, I received a message from his mother, asking to meet the next day. The location was a cafe right across from my new office. Figuring I might as well return the ring to her, I agreed. The following afternoon, I arrived at the cafe at a leisurely pace. The moment she saw me, she greeted me with a warm smile. "Come, have a seat. I got your favorite coffee for you." Smiling, I thanked her and took a seat, just as she cut straight to the chase. "I heard you've been considering breaking up with Jason. Is that true?" "It's not just talk. I'm serious," I replied with a calm smile. Her expression flickered with disappointment. "I really like you. I was hoping you and Jason would stay together. I know what happened recently, and I understand why you're upset. He was definitely in the wrong. What he did was beyond disappointing. Breaking up seems like the only reasonable choice." She had subtly hinted at marriage many times before, encouraging Jason to settle down. But he always avoided the conversation, making it clear he wasn't interested. Letting out a deep sigh, she admitted, "Honestly, this is our fault. We wasted 4 years of your life. That's why I decided to move on. If two people aren't a good match, forcing it won't change anything." With that, I pulled the ring box from my bag and placed it in front of her. "Please take this back. We've broken up, and it wouldn't be right for me to keep it." Her eyes briefly brightened with hope. "He gave you a ring. That means he's finally considering marriage. Why not give him another chance?" I gave her a faint smile and shook my head. He himself said this ring was nothing more than a regular piece of jewelry without any special meaning. Besides, I don't love him anymore. I'm looking ahead, and I have no intention of looking back. The brief hope in her eyes vanished instantly. She took the ring back and muttered, "All right then. A girl like you deserves better." Returning the ring lifted a burden off my shoulders. Like the delivery man had pointed out, the ring was expensive. If it had been lost, I wouldn't have been able to afford the cost. That night, Jason sent me a voice message. He sounded intoxicated, murmuring, "Are you really not willing to give me even the smallest chance? Are you just going to throw away 4 years together? The one who gave up first wasn't me. It was you." I had no desire to argue with someone drunk. Instead, I left him with one final response. "Mr. Jason, I hope we can part amicably. Let's both move on and stop dwelling on the past. We were adults, and adults should be accountable for their decisions. Not everything in life comes with a second chance." With no lingering emotional ties holding me back, I channeled all my energy into work. The company president wanted to promote me, but my qualifications weren't as strong as other candidates, making him hesitant. Eventually, he approached me directly. "Would you consider studying abroad? The company will cover all expenses, but you'll need to sign a contract. No employment with other companies for the next 20 years. In essence, they were investing in my growth in exchange for long-term commitment. All right, I'll go. Don't you want to discuss it with your family first?" I smiled. "They'll support my decision." "What about your boyfriend?" "I don't have one." That ended the conversation. He simply told me to start preparing for my departure. As expected, my parents were fully supportive. The only thing I had done that truly disappointed them was stubbornly staying with Jason, losing myself in the process. Now that I was finally free, no one was happier than they were. Encouraged by their support, I began handling the necessary paperwork for my trip. Then Jason found out. Once again, he showed up looking for me. After work, I saw him waiting outside my apartment complex, and irritation surged within me. "What do you want now?" Jason hesitated, his expression cautious. "Are you leaving because of me?" I shot him a look of pure disdain. "Don't flatter yourself. This has nothing to do with you. Then why are you suddenly going abroad? You never mentioned anything about it before. You never truly understood me. You never genuinely liked me. So, Jason, why are you pretending now?" His face darkened as he rushed to explain. "Who says I didn't like you, Isabel? I know I hurt you before, but I was with you because I truly cared. Years ago, those words might have moved me. Now they felt ridiculous. So what if you liked me? Do I have to like you back? Jason, have some self-awareness. Stop pestering me." Without another glance, I walked past him and entered my building. Since I would be abroad for 3 years, keeping my current apartment wasn't practical. I informed my landlord, who was understanding about the situation. She adjusted my annual rent to a monthly payment, which would end by the end of the month. When a former colleague heard I was leaving, she called to wish me well. We chatted for a while before she inevitably brought up office gossip. "The project you worked on fell through just as expected. Honestly, the only reason they agreed to cooperate was because of you. The company messed up by suddenly replacing you at the last minute. When the clients raised concerns, Thea caused a huge scene, yelling at them for lacking vision. It got so bad that they might have even blacklisted our company." Listening to her complaints, I leisurely sipped my fruit tea while watching a drama, feeling completely at ease. "It's fine. None of this is your fault. Just focus on your work. If management wants to blame someone, it won't be you." That's true. But her assistant wasn't so lucky. She got fired for failing to do her job properly. She was so furious that she immediately filed for labor arbitration. Who knows if she'll clear her name? Hearing that, I felt a pang of sympathy. Thea's assistant had been quite capable. When she was an intern, She worked under me for a while, diligent and responsible. It was obvious she wouldn't take this situation lightly. But what I didn't expect was that later that afternoon, after learning about the situation, I noticed that very night the same assistant had started a live stream demanding an official response from the company. Many viewers resonated with her experience, and within moments, the broadcast had attracted tens of thousands of people. The comment section was overflowing with criticism toward Jason's company, with everyone branding him as a cold-hearted businessman. However, as the assistant continued sharing details, public outrage shifted from just Jason to the real instigator, Thea. You all might not be aware, but our department's deputy manager was originally supposed to be a highly qualified woman. Yet, Thea schemed her way into the role, forcing that woman to resign under extreme pressure. Under mounting public backlash, the company was left with no choice but to issue a formal apology. However, this did little to quell the growing fury. Running out of options, Jason eventually reached out to me, asking if I could help clarify the situation. I let out a dry laugh. Did she say anything that wasn't true? Why should I cover for your mistakes? I scoffed and ended the call before he could reply. As the company's reputation continued to nosedive, even its stock prices took a hit. Frustrated shareholders began voicing their complaints, pushing Jason into a tough corner. After careful consideration, he ultimately chose to prioritize the company over Thea. Not long after, the company released an official statement announcing Thea's termination and their intent to hold her accountable for the damage she had caused to their image. Furious, Thea attempted to use her family's influence to pressure the company. But while they were caught up in their own turmoil, I had already boarded my flight overseas, stepping into the next chapter of my life. Surprisingly, the CEO had been quite thoughtful, concerned that I might struggle adjusting to a foreign country. He arranged for his cousin, who happened to live there, to pick me up. Given that the CEO was a middle-aged man losing his hair, I hadn't expected much. However, when I saw the tall and striking man waiting for me, I was momentarily taken aback. "You're Lambert," I asked. "And you must be Isabel," he replied. After confirming each other's identities, he took my suitcase and headed toward the airport exit. I quickly followed. The CEO had arranged a private apartment for me. It wasn't particularly large, but it felt safe and cozy. As I looked around feeling satisfied, Lambert placed my luggage down and pointed toward the neighboring unit. "I live right next door. If you ever need anything, just let me know." "Thank you." He gave me a meaningful glance before turning to leave. I didn't dwell on it, and instead began unpacking. At first, settling into a foreign environment was tough, and I even dealt with some minor discomfort due to the change in surroundings. Fortunately, Lambert was there to help. He handled everything with ease, and I later discovered that he was a professional interpreter who frequently traveled between countries. His experience in adapting to different places explained his effortless way of managing things. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, Lambert invited me over for a barbecue party at his place. He had a large group of friends, all of whom were incredibly friendly and welcoming. Initially, I felt a little out of place, but as time passed, I gradually eased into their company. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Excusing myself, I stepped away to answer the call. It was my former colleague. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I gazed at the city skyline outside the window and smiled. "Not at all. What's going on?" She hesitated before lowering her voice, as if trying to keep someone from overhearing. I just found out something. Apparently, Jason has been completely out of sorts lately. He's been drinking excessively and wandering around a particular neighborhood, muttering a name under his breath. I wasn't going to bring it up, but people figured out that you used to live there. Now, rumors are circulating that you had some kind of past with him. Her words didn't faze me in the slightest. I responded calmly, "That's ridiculous. I barely know him." At that moment, Lambert's voice called from outside the room. "Isabel, the barbecue's ready. Come join us." "Coming," I replied before turning back to my colleague. "Someone's calling me. I'll hang up now." Ending the call, I looked up to find Lambert watching me with a smile. My new life had begun, and I wasn't about to let the past interfere with it.